Hello guys, how's it going and welcome to another video. And in today's topic I really want to talk about some interesting discovery that I recently made myself. And it has to do with the relationship with the hero's journey and the Anon's 12-step program. And I'm going to share a practical case of how putting that into practice helped me relieve the amount of suffering that I was going through these past few weeks. So, to give you a little bit of a general overview, the Anon program is a 12-step program and it's applied to basically deal with any type of addiction that you have. And it's very interesting the way that it works because it opens with the first step saying that you are basically uh, unable to control this addiction that you have and that you suffer for of this disease, which is a disease of the soul. And that disease is what makes you consume, it's what makes you be an addict in any particular flavor that you want, whether that be codependency, alcoholism, drug addiction, neuroticism, what have you. And it's very similar also to the OP concept of us being very addictive to our saviors to the point that we don't want to deal with our demons. And both of these programs are based on Jung's philosophy that, according to Jung, you need to be able to get through life by exercising your capacity of making decisions. And that how much that fear to make decisions keep us at bay to live the life that we want to live and keep us slaves. And that also relates with our saviors. Sometimes our saviors, especially when you're an observer, really mess up with your mind and keeps you like postponing making a decision, because what you really want to do is observe. That's all that you want to do. You want to be out observing and then you mess up with the world later. But that later very rarely, if not at all, comes. So the reason why I was studying all of this is because I've been hit by a series of strong tidal waves this past couple of weeks, and I was in a lot of pain. I was feeling miserable. I was in a lot of suffering. I knew that I was causing that suffering to myself, but I wasn't able to understand how and why and where the mechanism comes from. So by studying the Anon material, I came with a very interesting concept that I can't say it in English, but in Spanish is called resortes ocultos. And resortes ocultos, what really means is like you have these hidden mechanisms that are activated in your childhood when you are first conscious. And those mechanisms give you the capacity to relate an experience with a story, with a narrative. So the problem here is not the experience that you went through. The problem here is the narrative that you tell yourself about that experience. So yes, you have to be very careful because there are some experiences that might be quite traumatic and that might be actually the cause of your pain and your suffering. But most of the times we go through certain experiences and we believe the stories that we tell ourselves about those experiences that we go through. So, for example, when we are at a party and nobody talked to us, the problem is not that nobody talked to us. The problem is the story that we tell ourselves when nobody talks to us. That's the real issue, and that's where, according to Anon, the neuroticism comes into play. Because you're telling yourself a story that is out of alignment with reality, or you're only seeing a bit tiny portion of reality, and you're making this big tiny portion an absolute, and that's what causes exactly those issues, those problems, because then you're going to need substances to cope with those problems. And the way that our functions work is very similar to the way that the addictions work, in a way, because we are only seeing a tiny fragment of reality each time that we go through an experience. And it's amazing, like David Chen says, how two different types can go to a certain place and live through a certain experience that is exactly the same experience, and each one of them will recall totally different aspects of that experience. So it's really interesting to understand that in order for us to break the addiction to our saviors, we need to understand that we need to disassociate from the narrative that we tell ourselves about the experiences that we live, because the addiction to our saviors manifests a lot on that. And I'm going to give you a sensory example of that. For example, I've been feeling like crap lately. I run out of ADHD meds. I've been feeling unable to concentrate. I've been feeling like unable to feel happy, unable to feel vigorized enough to do stuff. And that was making me feel quite depressed. So this morning I woke up feeling like shit. Like every other mornings this past couple of weeks, I've been woken up like feeling bitter, feeling resentful, feeling like I hate life, like life is unfair, like this is not fair, like why do I end up here? Why I'm unable to figure out why I end up here. I'm such a dumbass, I'm so stupid, blah 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 blah. So at first I thought that state of mind was caused by my emotional state. But then I went out to the store to buy some groceries. And because I was studying the resortes ocultos topic, an idea came to mind and said, okay, well, Miguel, what if everything that you tell about the experiences that you went through is your disease? What if that's not real? What if that doesn't really is what happened? And I played with that idea, and it was like a domino effect, because what happened is that I was feeling very tense all over my body, and my body started to untense. And I said, okay, what if this perception that you have of your early childhood memories is the story that you told yourself about those experiences? And that is what making you suffering unnecessarily and recalling those experiences even 20 years after those experiences happened. Because I was working out with some issues of some resentment with my dad and my mom. And yeah, I mean, it's so easy, even when you're on therapy, to blame others for your suffering. And that's the child. That's like David Shen says. That's the child blaming everyone. And because we have this egocentric nature, it's really easy to slip into this narrative that we are the center of the universe and that everything happens for us and because of us. And that's so messed up. That's so no fucking true. And I realized that, okay, Miguel, what if your story that you tell yourself about this type of experiences that you went through with your mom and your dad, what if that's not the case? I mean, you're not the center of the fucking universe, and maybe your parents were going through some issues themselves that didn't allow them to give you what you needed on that moment. You know? And what makes me more resentful is that They say that when you're a child, you're unable to communicate that need. You're unable to communicate to the people outside of you that you need to fulfill this need, whether that be that need of affection, that need of love, that need of communication, that need of comfort or of guidance. You're unable to communicate that. But the what made me hold on to that resentment is that I did was able to I did communicate that to my parents when those shitty experiences happened, and yet they didn't hear me, and yet they didn't care. And the issue is that I was telling myself this story. Oh, my dad and my mom didn't respond to that need of mine, therefore that they don't care. They are awful parents. I hate them. I wish they were dead. Blah 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 blah. That's the story that I tell myself about that. That's not the reality of what happened. And when I was able to drop that story, I realized how much unnecessary suffering I put myself through every fucking day by interpreting the stuff that happens on my day-to-day basis through my reduced saviors. And that most of the time people don't do stuff because they want to mess up with you. They don't do stuff when they want to fuck up with you. Even though I'm a double decider and I have that more in mind than the single deciders, I do sleep myself through decider issues, and I do feel hurt by people, and I do fall into this phase of those fuckers. They did me wrong. I'm going to make them pay. I'm going to take revenge. I'm going to make them wish they were never born, those fuckers. And that's ridiculous. And that also applies with observations. It's like, no, you're not able to go there. You're not able, in my case, that I'm demon and I, to make a guess about how this shit works. You're not able to jump through conclusions and blast what you know to the tribe because you're really not certain. That's the story that I tell myself. And with that narrative, it's going to be really difficult, if not impossible, to blast. So the moment that I drop that narrative and that I am able to tell myself apart from that narrative, oh my God, so much pain is unleashed. So much suffering is banished because I realize that it's my own ego putting me through that suffering, you know? And it's like, okay, this experience is shitty. It's happening. Are you going to be resentful for the rest of your life because of that? Or are you going to learn from that, grow from that, be the fucking grown up, and deal with that shit with no resentments? And to be able to do that, you need to be able to let go that stupid narrative of you being a fucking victim all the fucking time. Because that's what messes up with everyone, regardless type, everyone. So it's not the experience, it's what you tell about that experience, period. And the moment that I was able finally to let that go, oh my God. I even start laughing myself about how ridiculous many of those judgments that my mind, my ego generates are. And how so out of line with reality are. They're so out of line, so out of line. Like, oh my God. And that gives you the peace to live in your truth, to live in the true self, in the true you that you're destined to be and that you always were. It's just that you hide yourself under so much bullshit because nobody tells you these kinds of stuff, and we are the first generation to learn from this and to put attention to this and to make the unconscious conscious. And also, that's amazing. I mean, what a fucking great time to be alive, guys. because we're the first generations that are able to do that. Before that, no one was able to do that. So a lot of unresolved shit from our past generations were passed on to us. I do believe. But once that you realize that is crap, in the way that it's not real, it's only the narrative that you tell yourself. So drop that narrative because you don't need it. And it's not doing your demons more than your saviors, is dropping the narrative of doing your saviors when you need to do your demons. Is that easy? So when you need to you do when you need to do your demons, you need to do those functions. Period. Your life is asking you for that. The universe is asking you for that because you're not the center of the fucking universe. Period. So if you need to blast. If you need to consume. If you need to play. And if you need to sleep. But going through lives trying to do just one or two things of all the 8 things available because of this stupid narrative going inside our brains all the fucking time is what causes all the tidal waves, is what causes all the suffering. And I'm not saying that I am spiritually awake, because I'm not awake. I'm light years to be awake, and there's sometimes I still dependent on stuff that I don't need to be dependent on. Yes, I got messed up by it, but now this morning I was able to comprehend a little bit more how being free means. And being free is that, being free from your narrative, being free from the things that you tell yourself in your head about what happens to you every day. So I hope that you enjoy this video, guys, and see you on the next video. Bye bye.